And still, your UFC lightweight champion, Islam Makhachev, in a tremendous 5-round battle with Dustin Poirier. Makhachev submitting Poirier late in round 5 and retaining his UFC lightweight championship in a fight that was much closer maybe than a lot of people thought might be. Poirier showed out, but Makhachev too good in the end. And for more on UFC 302 and the aftermath, we bring in Brian Campbell, CBS Sports combat sports analyst. BC, that was a heck of a championship fight to finish out UFC 302. How did it look from your standpoint?
Look, it was all heart, all guts from both competitors, but obviously in a losing sense in what could end up being, right? He wouldn't commit to retirement afterwards officially, but what could be the last fight in the incredible pro career of Dustin Poirier, he would not go quietly, and that's what allowed this fight to really fit that description we like to call combat sports sometimes, the theater of the unknown. We knew Poirier would have trouble with the wrestling of Makhachev and really the all-around perfect game that he brings out there, and in the first couple rounds that seemed to be the case, but we know we can never measure the true heart of a champion. And even though Dustin Poirier, the one thing his great career has lacked is that undisputed championship reign, right? Former interim title holder, never could win the big one, but he's got the heart and will of a world-class championship Hall of Fame performer. He survived the storm well. He rallied back to bloody Makhachev in the championship rounds, and it turned out to be his own takedown defense and incredible stamina that kept him in the fight. And as we got closer to the finish, obviously the way Makhachev was able to finally take him down and submit him really speaks to his greatness. But Makhachev looked to be in peril in those final rounds, bleeding from the face, looking to maybe be 1 or 2 strikes away from really being in trouble. If you want to really see for firsthand how close this fight actually was and how tough it was, look at the celebration of Team Makhachev afterwards. They are not usually an emotional group. They are very stoic. They leaped the octagon fence and leaped all over Makhachev following that 5th round submission. It's his 3rd title defense. It ties him for most in lightweight history, but it's hard to not exit this fight talking about one man, and that's Dustin Poirier, the American hero in so many ways for being so battle-tested. Once again, even though, yes, he did not climb the mountain in his 3rd and seemingly final time at a full UFC title, he once again left his mark.
Yeah, Poirier might not have gone over, but he got over in wrestling terms to say on this night. We got to talk about Makhachev, though, because afterwards he said, all right, 155, he's kind of proven his thing. He wants to go up to 170. How do you look at his prospects at 170?
Very, very bright. And here's the reason, right? He's almost flawless as a fighter. Okay, hard to say in a really tough fight in which Poirier rallied back and hurt him for sure. But this is a guy who's got such great defense, such great timing and technique on his striking game, an incredible mind, not just the Hall of Famer Khabib Nurmagomedov in his corner, the former lightweight champion, but Khabib's late father Abdulmanap and that coaching tree out of Dagestan, Russia that they've handed down. Makhachev is so large for the 170-pound division, of which he has absolutely dominated. This was his 14th consecutive victory, 13th in the division. But imagine him moving up in weight, going up to welterweight, which is 170. He, of course, is the champion at 155. Him at 170 pounds, I actually imagine him to be very effective. He'll have that extra gas tank to really fuel his sublime grappling skills. Maybe you saw him in the championship rounds of this fight use up a little bit too much of that gas tank in trying to take down and submit Poirier before ultimately doing so. But you're talking about a guy who called his shot, says he wants to move up to welterweight. We know Leon Edwards is the champion. He's got a fight coming up against Bilal Muhammad. Not only do I think Makhachev's a player, I think he may actually be favored as the smaller fighter moving up in weight. He really is that great. He just finished off the former pound-for-pound king, Alexander Volkanovski, 2 victories, including a head kick knockout. I know that was a smaller fighter moving up. But at the end of the day, it's skills that win fights. Nobody is more skilled in this game than Makhachev.
Do you think we see Poirier in the octagon again?
You know, you really have to take his words closely. And what I heard in what he said afterwards in an emotional speech was, if I come back, could I still do it? Could I still beat some of the very best? Yes. But for what? Look, this is a guy who became a crossover pay-per-view star. That's what happens when you defeat Conor McGregor in back-to-back fights, which he did a few years ago. He's made a lot of money. He's known for the charitable outputs he does through his foundation. He's a man's man in so many ways, an ambassador of this sport. But unless, let's say, McGregor comes out and beats Michael Chandler and calls him out, unless there's something really worth it for Dustin, he's fought for every title he could. He's moved weight classes. He fought for the BMF strap. He's done it all. I don't think we see him again because his connection to his family, his wife and children is so strong. He shouted them out afterwards. He brought his young daughter to her first fight to see him in person. I think this is the end of the ride, the hat tip, the walk away for one of the greatest fighters in history. But most importantly, maybe the greatest fighter we've ever seen to walk in and out of that UFC octagon and never win a title. That's a debate. Nobody wants to be on the top of that list. We're talking about greats like Dan Henderson, Uriah Faber, but Dustin Poirier right there, right atop that group. If he never fights again, just look up and down the list of not only who he fought, but who he beat. It's champion after former champion after big name. His biggest losses have been some of his greatest performances because of how honest a fighter he has always been. I do not think we will see Dustin Poirier again, but I also do not think we will see someone exactly like him again. A hero's hero in so many ways, a guy who has evolved, improved, and more importantly, maybe similar to the career of Randy Couture, the former two-division champion and legend. A guy who you could never count out. It doesn't matter if he's been knocked out, pulled the fight before. Dustin Poirier is never out of a fight.
You mentioned Conor McGregor. We're going to see Conor McGregor before the month is up in UFC 303 in Vegas against Michael Chandler. Look, do you have any idea what kind of Conor McGregor we're going to see at 170 later this month?
It's really hard to have high hopes, and you want to have high hopes because covering Conor McGregor, whether you're a journalist like me, whether you're a fan, it has been some of the most exciting times in the history of this sport for a reason. But we're asking a lot out of a guy in his late 30s, coming off a major injury, huge multiple-year layoffs. He's been distracted in the movie game, making the Roadhouse remake. There's been whispers of maybe living life loose on the ends outside of training camp, of which he is in, of course, right now for Chandler. Michael Chandler is beatable. He's also in his late 30s, an action fighter who takes big risks, and Conor will still be the naturally bigger man here as they don't have to cut weight hard. They'll come in comfortably at 170. Yes, anyone can win this fight, but it's really hard to look at Conor McGregor's history since 2016, since he was atop the mountain as a two-division champion. Yes, no one's going to say anything bad about the money he earned against Floyd Mayweather in boxing a couple years later, but the second half of Conor's career has been a lot of headlines, a lot of money, a lot of sponsorships, a lot of business, not a lot of victories inside the cage. It's a young man's game, and inactivity has been typically the killer for big names who try to dart in and out of activity. It's hard to imagine we're going to see the best of Conor McGregor. I guess the only hope is we're going to see the best of what he's got left.
Well, for the next 4 weeks, we're going to be talking about what we might see with Conor McGregor at the end of the month. Meanwhile, UFC 302 delivered, especially in the main event. And, of course, Brian Campbell always delivers here on CBS Sports HQ. Thanks, BC. And here's a look at the main card for UFC 303, set for Saturday, June 29th at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. And right at the top of the card, in bold letters, Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler in a welterweight bout at 170. Coming up, highlights and reaction from New Jersey and UFC 302, which is now in the books. Stick around. We'll be back on CBS Sports HQ.